Okay, so before we get started this morning, I'm going to dedicate this class in memory of Harvey Spitzer, and and also for Refuah Shalema for um, Basha Batsivia Beverly, who always sits next to me during class, and I miss her because she's like my eyes. So I really hope she has a refuah shalema, and we're so sorry for losing a real neshama in Harvey Spitzer. So I want to do a little something different because today's July 5th that we're recording. Yesterday was July 4th. And for those of you who have been with us studying Shoftim, I want you to understand that both America and Israel were founded on the Word of God. There's a covenant both in America and in Israel that helped the founding fathers create America, the United States of America. And I came across a very, very special video that I want to share with you. And I think that if you think about it, it has a lot to do with Shoftim as well, because we're talking about in Shoftim the unification
with a cup of coffee,
12 tribes, and we're trying to put together a nation, indivisible, with liberty, with justice, under God, in Eretz Yisrael. And those were the premises that America was founded under. So I'd like to share with you this beautiful video, and I hope that you will enjoy it. If you cannot hear it, tell me immediately so that I can make sure that we do hear it. Okay. All right, we're going to get started. Here we go. Ready?
Americans said patriotism was an important part of who we are as a country. Since then, the percentage has fallen sharply. Now only 38% say patriotism is important to them. Why the steep decline? Fewer Americans can tell you what Americans believe, the principles and ideas that unite us as a nation. Our next guest says as we celebrate the country's 247th birthday, we should reflect on our Judeo-Christian heritage and how the Bible and Israel inspired the founding of our nation. Rabbi Meir Soloveichik is author of the new book, Providence and Power, 10 Portraits in Jewish Statesmanship. Rabbi, it's good to have you with us. So we know our founding fathers rejected the tyranny of the British monarchy, but how and why did they embrace the biblical values of Israel?
So I think one of the best ways of describing who we are is to see ourselves through the insightful eyes of non-Americans. Obviously, one of the greatest works ever written about America was written by a Frenchman, and that's Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville. But another insightful work was composed by a dear departed friend of mine, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom. And he noted the following. He said, when he came to visit America for the first time in the 1960s, he visited the memorials, Jefferson Memorial and the Lincoln Memorial. And what struck him is that aside from statues, images of the figures and founders in American history, there were also words, the ideas that were inscribed behind them, the ideas that they gave to America and to the world. And what he said is that London has nothing like this. England had a class and tradition-based society. There was no need to explain what it believed, because if you didn't know about it, you didn't belong. Whereas America, he said, was inspired by the Bible to be a covenantal society. It was founded around a set of ideas. And this is where the Bible comes in so profoundly, because as Rabbi Sachs put it, he said, Israel, ancient and modern, and America are the only cases in history of a country being founded in dedication to an idea. And that's why the founders looked first and foremost to the story of biblical Israel.
And you highlight 10 leaders, statesmen who you feel best exemplified Jewish leadership, from King David and Queen Esther to David Ben-Gurion and Menachem Begin. So what admirable qualities did all of them share?
So at the heart of biblical
This is
statesmanship
fascinating.
is a certain sense that even as a man or woman who is reflecting greatness in leadership is truly achieving great things, what these leaders
Call
see
Sandy Wine.
is providence itself. I once asked a friend of mine, the great British historian Andrew Roberts, whether he could think of a great European statesman that was humble, and he didn't name any. Churchill believed in God, but as Andrew put it, in Churchill's theology, God's job was largely taking care of Winston Churchill. Whereas what's amazing about David is, at the moment of his greatest brilliance in statecraft or in military achievements, he always sees the hand of God. Or as he famously says to Goliath, the God that saved me from the lion and from the bear, he will save me against you.
Those of us familiar with the Torah, the Old Testament, and the history of the Jewish nation know that God brought judgment against the people when they took their eyes off of him, when they embraced other gods, they fell into sin. So what is the lesson for America today from the example of these 10 Jewish leaders?
And so what's incredible about the greatest of American statesmen is that they saw providence in the greatest moments of success, and then also in the most serious of setbacks. Thus, Washington, after the victory that was the revolution, wrote an incredible letter, which I would recommend to your viewers, to the Jews of Savannah. If you Google Washington Savannah Jews, he compared the miracles of the Exodus to what he saw as the miracles of the revolution. Both, of course, involved the victory of a tiny people against what was then one of the most important and powerful empires on earth. But then we have another incredible example of American statesmanship, which is Lincoln, who gives what I think is the greatest speech in American history, which is the second inaugural. And there, yes, Lincoln is about to win the war, but what Lincoln doesn't do in this inaugural is revel in his victory. He doesn't get up there and say, as we might have expected someone today to say, USA, USA, USA. Rather, he says, this is the great losses that we have experienced throughout the country is God's judgment.
What do you want people to learn from the book?
Well, there's a few different lessons I would like us to learn from the book. One is to see what biblical statesmanship truly is. And you see that in great figures of faith like David, and I believe of Menachem Begin. But you also see, and this is something I think your viewers will truly understand, how one of the other aspects of the story of the Jews is that even in moments where faith is not playing a central role, the mysterious story of the Jewish people it becomes the greatest source of faith itself.
All right. The book is Providence and Power, 10 Portraits in Jewish Statesmanship. Rabbi Meir Soloveichik, thank you for sharing your time and insights. We appreciate it. God bless you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Could everyone hear that? Hello? And everybody there?
Yes.
Yes, it was really interesting.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, very. Rhonda, could we get a copy of the link?
Yes, I'd be happy to
Have you
send.
send us the link so
Yes,
we could see it
yes.
again?
Of course, of course.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So,
Rhonda,
yes,
Rhonda, can you hear me? Rhonda, can you
yes,
hear me?
yes, yes.
I just want to say, I want to say something as an ex-Brit on the American side at that time, because I side with the Americans. I spent some time in Boston, and I learned a lot. I'd learned about the British in taking over in America when I was at school, but I learned a lot from the other side when I actually went to Boston and I did the Boston Trail, and I learned about a lot of things. Just outside Leeds is a Puritan chapel, and I'd been there and I'd heard about how close the Puritans were to Judaism. And I noticed then that they didn't use crosses. And I also learned that when I was in Boston, that the people who were leaving Europe, I'm talking about England and Europe at that time, were leaving because they were being persecuted by the Latin Church. And this is why they have their ideology of starting a new land in freedom of thought. And it was really a revelation to understand, to learn about it and to understand it. In Boston, they've got the
Marion, this is I appreciate your comments. I'd like to continue with the lesson, if you don't mind.
No, okay. I'm just trying to say that that I so agree, with the film, and thank you very much for showing it, because no, I'm serious. I mean, I've seen it myself, and I fully understand what the man's saying.
Good. Okay, so what I want to now connect that to, did you hear in the video that the commentator said when the Jews took their eyes off of God and sinned,
Yes,
there was serious issues with that. So that is so connected to our learning of Shoftim. And that's exactly what we found in our learning so far. Rather than continuing their struggle to possess the land and to build the tribe, their tribes based upon the principle of ethical monotheism. That's what our religion is about. Ethical monotheism, the belief in one God and the belief in ethics and values that God has given us through the Torah. The people of Israel dwelt in the midst of the Canaanites. They dwelt in the midst, not the Canaanites dwelt within them. And so they took their daughters, they took the Canaanites' daughters for wives, and they gave their own daughters to the Canaanite sons. And when that happened, they all served their Canaanite gods, because that's what happens in an intermarriage situation. It happened then, it happens now, because, and it's very interesting that I was reading that when there are two religions that come together, the religion that takes the least amount of effort,
it's the one that they choose.
the least amount of responsibility, is the one that wins over the other. And that is what happens today, and that's what happens back in ancient Israel, that there were rules and regulations in the Torah that were difficult, were challenging, and took us into a different realm of behavior, of responsibility, and of ethics. And consequently, it was much easier to take a little teeny clay god and put it in your tent or in your little house and worship that whenever you felt like it, than to do and to observe the laws of the Torah. So who could fail to identify the parallels between this struggle of the ancient tribes of Israel and the new lands that we are talking about today. Their cult and as I said, their culture demands more moral and ritual restraint. That's exactly what our religion does. It requires cultural and moral restraint. So, having said that, it was inevitable that in the chapter 3, where we had all the tribes trying to settle the land and yet becoming less involved on a daily basis with God, it was inevitable that God would send somebody to remind us, to wake us up, that there were issues that we needed to take care of. And that somebody's name was Kushan Rishatayim. Kushan Rishatayim. He was the king of Aram Naharaim. Naharaim is literally the Hebrew word of Aram, between two rivers. And those two rivers were the Tigris and the Euphrates. So that was way up north in what is today northern Syria. Aram was to the north of Israel. So what was it? Why were these people coming to Israel to make us suffer in ways that we don't really know? It just talked about the suffering of the people. Now, was it a tax on some of the people? Was it some form of slavery that they put some of the people through? We don't really know what was going on in everyday life, but this guy who's called Kushan Rishatayim. So we have to take a look at this name. It's not a name of a king, because there is no Aramaean king called Kushan Rishatayim. But what it is in Hebrew is that it is Rishatayim, Russia. The word Russia, Tayim, means two evils. It's somebody, this guy named Kushan, who was not just evil, he was doubly evil. So he gets the name Kushan Rishatayim, twice evil. And so he brings to Eretz Yisrael difficulties, challenges, hardship, reasons for the people to cry out to Hashem, and reasons for them to look to God and hope that there will be someone who can save them. And so what happens is that this particular person is brought to justice after 8 years of hard subjugation in Israel by the first of the judges that we are introduced to. That first judge is, do you remember?
Othniel.
That's right, Othniel. Othniel is Othniel ben Kenaz, and he is the younger brother of, do you remember?
Caleb.
That's right, Caleb, in the tribe of
Yehuda? No.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yehuda.
Yep. He was from the tribe of Yehuda. So it's very interesting that we hear about this Othniel. Now, we heard about him a while ago. We heard about him in Yehoshua.
Right.
We heard that what was he going to offer to someone who was going to help him get rid of the Canaanites in the tribe of Judah?
His daughter.
Go to Hebron.
That's right. He
He
was in
wanted to go to
he
Hebron.
was in Hebron, and that was right in the area of where the Canaanites were, and they wanted to get rid of the Canaanites. He says, "Whoever helps me will have the hand of my daughter Achsa." Achsa becomes his wife because of their great success in getting as many of the Canaanites out of the tribe of Judah, and Shimon was part of that battle. They could not get rid of the Philistines because they had iron weapons and iron chariots. Now let's take a look. Let's take a moment to think about what that means. The enemy has iron chariots and iron weapons. It means that we are in what the non-religious world would call the Iron Age. Now, that means that these nations that are all over the world, we often think that when we're studying Jewish history, that Israel and the Jewish people are the only people on the face of the planet. And that's not true. We would like to think that was true, but it's not. There are other civilizations all over the map, and these people have been putting together empires with armies and weapons of war, and they've been developing these weapons, iron chariots, iron weapons, weapons to help them succeed in battle. But we're going to hear a lot about the Jewish nation trying to get rid of these other nations, but we never seem to have iron or metal weapons. Do you have any idea what we were doing in all of this time that we don't have the same kind of weapons that the others do? Where have we been?
Maybe we were just developing the land.
That's right, but
Right.
where did we come from?
Slavery.
Right. And what's the first thing we do when we get when Moshe is told by Paro, go? What's the first thing that happens after the people they leave, they get into the desert, and what happens? Who starts to follow them?
Egyptians.
Egyptians. And what are the Egyptians following them in?
Chariots.
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 Iron chariots. Now, as a slave nation, we had no means of making weapons. We had no money. We had no supplies. And here we are told to go. So we take our bread, we take our children, we take our cattle or whatever we had, whatever meager things we had, and we leave. But we don't have weapons.
Right.
And then after God saves us at the Yam Suf, at the Red Sea, what happens? The weapons of the chariots of Egypt are destroyed. They're destroyed by God. So now we're on the other side, and now we're going to have to face other hostile nations, and we have no weapons. Okay? So we continue to do what for 40 years? We're not building up arms and armies of mass destruction. We're not developing any nuclear weapons in the desert. What are we doing? We're surviving. There's nothing else for us to do but get to where God is trying to take us so that we can have a country, so that we can form an army, so we can form a military, and we can start to defend ourselves. But between the time that we get to the other side of the Yam Suf and the time we cross into Eretz Yisrael with Yehoshua, we are not creating weapons as if we were a nation that had the means to do so. So what we do in the desert when we are attacked by Amalek and by other nations, we are fighting under the auspices of God, and we are winning because we are God's people, and God is winning the wars for us. We are not using weapons that would kill and destroy any nation. So these wars that we find ourselves in now and after Yehoshua, all the time that Yehoshua was alive, what were we trying to do in Eretz Canaan? What were we doing almost always during the life of Yehoshua?
Intermarrying? I don't know.
No, come on. What were we doing? We were fighting wars against the Canaanites. We had to fight for every square inch of every place so that we could take over the country that God was giving us. Our whole mission during Yehoshua's time was to live a godly life and to fight the Canaanites and rid the country of this horrible people. Now, every single war that was fought with Yehoshua was won how? How did we win those wars? What did we learn in Yehoshua? Every single war was won because of what?
Hashem.
God. God is the victory that we think that we did ourselves. He was the one who brought us to victory each and every time. Now, when you
Excuse me, Ronda.
yes,
Think about past history. Look at 1948. That we won, that was a miracle, and the 6-Day War was also a miracle.
That's right.
In our own time.
That's right.
Anyway, that's it.
Now, having said that the whole period of Yehoshua was trying to rid the land of Canaanites. It was a whole time of military campaigns, one after the other. And finally, Yehoshua says, okay, all right, we've done as much as we can now. Everyone needs to go to their tribal lands. We're going to now spread out, take control, and he says, you are obligated to rid the rest of the country under your own means. So that's where we find ourselves now. The death of Yehoshua was the death of military victory for the Jews by God. And now we have to take on military victories as human beings fighting for God, not God fighting for us. So now what do we find? We find that Othniel seems to be informally appointed, or he arises as a leader, and on the one hand, he represents the final link between the generations of Yehoshua and the elders, and those that will succeed him. He's kind of that link, because he's linked to Caleb, and Caleb is of Yehoshua's generation, and he is linked to the new generation of those that have to fight in order to settle and take possession of the land. So Othniel prevails against this Kushan Rishatayim, and he gets rid of them. And after that battle, we don't really hear very much about it. He is really a representative of his area, because these people came down from the north, and it was effective of several of the tribes that he took charge of, and so consequently he destroys them. And the dynamics of this win is that it starts the rise of other area judges who help in military victories. Now, the interesting thing is that in the Gemara, it says, and also in Yehoshua, it says that Othniel is an example of what the verse states, and this is the verse: the sun rises and the sun sets. Now, that verse is in Kohelet as well, and it said, and what does that really mean? Don't we all know that the sun rises and the sun sets? Well, of course, but that's really not what is meant here. It means that in order to understand the Sefer Shoftim, we have to understand that while one sun, one leader is in the sky, there's another leader being trained, another leader being ready to take over. So when that sun sets, another sun rises. And so we learn that when Moshe Rabbeinu departs from this world, who takes over from him? Moshe's sun set, and we learn that who takes over? Yehoshua takes over. And while Yehoshua's sun is in the sky, there are others being seemingly to be trained and ready for the needs of Bnei Yisrael. And Othniel is the next son after Yehoshua, and his son had risen as the verse states, when Yehoshua's sun set. So the first leader that we learn about, Othniel ben Kenaz, is our first judge. Now, we don't know much else about him, except there's many midrashim, and the midrashim teach us. I'll give you a few small tidbits about him, but I believe that Midrash tried to teach us stories, but aren't always that we don't know that they're true. They're just trying to teach us something. We learned that Othniel was a scholar, a Torah scholar, because of where he came from and what he was doing. It says that he was a big scholar. We learned that he was a big warrior, and that he was very special in his day. Now, I want to bring something else to your attention before we go on to the next judge. And that is that Othniel's successful tenure also points to another concept that we're learning. Now, some people will say that each one of the judges comes from a particular tribe, and they rescue that particular tribe from the terrors or the difficulties and challenges that befall them because of their not adhering to God's laws. So some people might say, well, then Shoftim is not about a nation. It's really about each particular tribe. And that particular point has come up a couple of times. And somebody needs to mute themselves. Hello? Where there's some real noise going on, please mute yourself. So, having said that about some people thinking that, and scholars, I'm not people in class, but I'm talking about scholars saying that Shoftim is really about each tribe having a hero rising up, the hero taking control militarily, bringing the Israelites to justice once again, and then departing this earth. Well, that's all well and good. And even though part of that is true, we have learned over and over and over again that it's important that all of Klal Yisrael, all of Bnei Yisrael, must stick together so that they can all help each other in the difficulties that they find themselves in. And so while Othniel might introduce us to a new period of time of Israelite history where, as I said, someone may rise up that's particular to a particular of a tribe, it is not always just that one tribe that's affected. And so consequently, we have to look beyond the tribal involvement to see whether or not Israel as a whole straying from God, and God bringing opposition to their lives because they aren't following his laws and his Torah. We find the dynamics are not just of one tribe fighting an enemy, but we have to be supported by other tribes. Now, I'm going to I'm going to put something on the screen because I think it's important. Okay. Here. Okay. Can someone read this for me, please? Xenia?
I'll do it. Yeah. No Israelite stands alone, neither insofar as his or her mission and destiny are concerned, nor with respect to their fate. All Israelites are bound together, a lesson driven home in the most startling fashion by the example of Achan and the ban placed upon the spoils of Jericho from Joshua chapter 7. Israel has transgressed and abrogated my covenant that I have commanded them. God had thundered, indicating that the axiom of nationhood implies a most significant corollary, co-responsibility.
Okay, does
Mhm.
anybody remember the story of Achan and the Battle of Ai? Anyone remember?
Yeah, they couldn't,
What happened to the Bnei Israel in the first Battle of Ai
they were defeated.
by the citizens of Ai? That's correct. They were defeated.
Right.
Now,
And
if
then they
God,
went back
now
again.
if God is with them in every single battle, why were they defeated? You remember?
No.
What has it got to do with this guy Achan?
That he did something that wasn't correct, and I don't
Oh, right.
remember.
Took the spoils of war.
That's right. He
Right.
took, God says of the
Yeah.
city of Ai and these battles, you do not take the spoils of war unless I tell you it's okay. And what happens is he takes the spoils of war and hides them in his tent. And so the first battle, there were 36 men who are killed from the Israelites, and they lose the war, that particular battle. And God says to Yehoshua says to God, what happened here? You said we were going to be successful. God says, somebody didn't listen.
Right.
Somebody didn't obey my law about not taking spoils of war. And what happened? They went through the entire nation of Israel to find who was responsible for taking the spoils of war. And what happens? He is killed. And it shows us that all of Israel, all the Jews are responsible for one another. Co-responsibility. So you can say that one tribe is fighting against the enemy, or another tribe is being singled out to fight against the enemy. But all the nation of Jews are responsible for each other. And when we forget that, today, yesterday, or 2,000, 3,000 years ago, the same thing happens. We are all responsible for each other, and we are all part of Bnei Yisrael. So no matter what the war is, or who it's with, or what section of the country it's with, we are all brothers, and we all must stick together as one nation. We cannot forget that. That's a very important lesson for all of us.
I'm so glad you did that.
Okay? What?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have anything to say? Anybody questions, comments so far? Nope. All right. You ready to go on to the next judge? Hello?
Yeah, why not?
Anybody out there in TV land?
Okay, next
Okay,
judge,
next judge, next judge.
next judge.
We're trying to be good and be muted.
Okay. The next judge, ladies, is Ehud. Ehud. Okay. The first judge, Othniel ben Kenaz, and the second judge is Ehud. We're going to take our text. We're going to turn to chapter 3, and we're going to read about Ehud.
Oh, here he is.
Now he is a very, very interesting guy.
Ooh.
And we're going to turn in chapter 3 to, let's go to Pasuk 11.
Yeah, it says son of Gera.
Okay, does everyone have that?
Yeah.
Chapter 3, Pasuk 11. All right. Do I have a reader? Anyone?
I'll do
I'll-
it.
Okay, go ahead, Xenia.
Okay. All right, Pasuk 11 actually starts in the middle of a sentence,
Go ahead.
at least here. He prevailed over Kushan, Rashathaim,
Rashatayim.
and the land had peace for 40 years. When Othniel the Kenizzite died, the Israelites again did what was offensive to the Lord, and because they did what was offensive to the Lord let King Eglon of Moab prevail over Israel. Eglon brought the Ammonites and the Amalekites together under his command and went and defeated Israel and occupied the city of palms. The Israelites were subjected to King Eglon of Moab for 18 years. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up a champion for them, the Benjamite Ehud, son of Gera, a left-handed man. It happened that the Israelites sent tribute to King Eglon of Moab through him. So Ehud made for himself a two-edged dagger, a gomed in length, which he girded on his right side under his cloak. He presented the tribute to King Eglon of Moab. Now Eglon was a very stout man. When Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he dismissed the people who had conveyed the tribute. But he himself returned from Peslim near Gilgal, and he said, "Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you." Eglon thereupon commanded silence. So all those in attendance left his presence. And when Ehud approached him, he was sitting alone in the cool upper chamber. Ehud said, "I have a message for you from God." Whereupon he rose from his seat. Reaching with his left hand, Ehud drew the dagger from his right side and drove it into Eglon's belly. The fat closed over the blade, and the hilt went in after the blade, for he did not pull the dagger out of his belly, and the filth came out.
Yeah.
Stepping out into the vestibule, Ehud shut the doors of the upper chamber on him and locked them. After he left, the courtiers returned. When they saw that the doors of the upper chamber were locked, they thought he must be relieving himself in the cool chamber. They waited a long time, and when he did not open the doors of the chamber, they took the key and opened them. And there their master was lying dead on the floor. But Ehud had made good his escape while they delayed. He had passed Peslim and escaped to Sarah. When he got there, he had the ram's horn sounded through the hill country of Ephraim, and all the Israelites descended with him from the hill country, and he took the lead. "Follow me closely," he said, "for the Lord has delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hands." They followed him down and seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites. They let no one cross. On that occasion, they slew about 10,000 Moabites. They were all robust and brave then, yet not one of them escaped. On that day, Moab submitted to Israel, and the land was tranquil for 80 years.
Okay.
After he-
Okay. There you go.
Pretty gory.
I told you that Shoftim is not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of stuff going on. Now, I'm going to show you, we're going to look at a map. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Eglon is the king of Moab.
Right.
Who started this country here? Whose country is from ancestors started?
Ruth.
Who?
Ruth and Oprah.
Okay, but who before that? Way before.
Oh.
Way before. Remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yeah, they turned to salt.
Who's living in Sodom and Gomorrah? Who's living in Gomorrah?
Hold on.
Who?
Lot.
Abraham's brother.
Who's
Lot.
Lot?
Lot.
Lot is living in,
Right.
okay, now Lot finally leaves. He leaves before the city is destroyed by God with his two daughters. They
Right.
go to the mountains, and what happens? They think once the city is destroyed, that Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed, that there's no more world, that they're the only ones left in the whole
Right.
world. And so what do the daughters do to Lot?
They slept with him.
They seduce him and sleep with him, and they carry his child. And what's the name of the first child that is born?
Moab.
Moab.
Or
Me, from Av, from father, from my father. That's what Moab means, from my father. Now, Eglon is now the king of Moab, and he asks other nations, Ammon, and then down here where they can't really see it, here are the Amalekites. You see over here?
Yeah.
So he asked them to join him in battle against the Israelites. Now, Ehud is from what tribe? What tribe did it just say? He's a
Benjamin.
Benjamite.
Right.
Right, from right here, the tribe of Benjamin. Okay. Now, Othniel is down here. Here's Judah. This is where Othniel was. Okay. Shimon and Yehuda fight with Othniel. Now, the next area is Benjamin. And where's the Jordan River? Right through here. Here's the Dead Sea. The Jordan River goes right through here, right? This is the east side of Israel, the east bank of the Jordan River. The 2.5 tribes who are there, half of Manasseh, Gad, and Reuven. They're over here on the east side of the Jordan. The rest of the tribes are over here. So what is the first thing that we learn? It says immediately in the first sentence, let me turn back to where we were. Change my glasses, hold on. Let's see what it says in the text. That and the children of Israel can continue to do which was despised, that the Lord despised, and the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done what was evil, what God despised. Okay. Then it says that they asked Ammon and Amalek in Pasuk 13. You see the what we're talking about? And they asked those two countries to join. He joined with him, and he went and smote Israel, and they possessed the city of date palms. What city is the city of date palms? Jericho, that's correct. So we're going back to where we came from, where we entered. We're going back to now fighting people coming in as they cross the Jordan, coming to the first city they encounter in Israel, because they can't very easily cross the Dead Sea. So they can't cross from here. They can't go across the Dead Sea. So what they have to do is go up That's
Travel.
why that's why he asked Ammon to join him, because he needs to go up north and then westward across the Jordan River. You see that? That's why he asked them to help him go and fight the Israelites. So having said that, now what happens? So they're fighting a battle. They're going to fight over Jericho, the first city, and the children of Israel serves. He wins the battle, Eglon, and they serve the king 18 years. It's a long
Wow.
time. It's a long time he served the king. Now, we don't have a lot of detail about what went on in the servitude. We don't know exactly what it was, but apparently it was enough to cause the children of Israel to cry to the Lord, and lo and behold, God answers them with Ehud. Ehud is the son, Ehud ben Gera, and he is a Benjamite, a man who uses his left hand. It talks about he has a problem with his right hand, and so he is what we call a smolit, a lefty. Now, why is that significant? It's very significant in how he defeats the king Eglon. Now, what time do we have enough time to go into the story? What time is it?
It's 10 to 12.
Okay. All right. I think we have enough time. So hang on. We're gonna start. So what happens is that Ehud in Pasuk 16, Ehud made for himself a sword. And it describes the sword as a double-edged sword, and it was a short sword. It was more like a long knife. And he puts that knife under his clothing on his right side.
Well, because he'd grab it like this.
That's exactly right. So that's the importance here of the whole story. The fact that everybody seems to be a righty. So if you're a righty, you go to your left side to grab the sword or the knife, and then you encounter the person and engage them in battle. So what happens when a lefty puts a sword on? He puts it on his right side. Now, most of the time, people aren't looking on the right side because everybody they assume is a righty. So they're all looking on the left side.
Rhonda,
Yes.
I don't know where I read it, but there's something that a lot of leaders are lefties.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
There are several presidents I know were left-handed.
Okay. Well, I have a husband and 2 sons who are lefties.
Right.
They're going to be leaders.
Okay. And it
My
says,
mother.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, my mother, who passed away in 2011, when she was born and everything, that was like idiots were left-handed.
Yeah,
And
right.
they forced her to become a righty, and as a result of it, she was ambidextrous.
Right. Yes,
Because
they all tried to discourage children very sternly by not to use their left hand.
Rhonda?
Yes.
I haven't read ahead or anything, but there must be something special about the fact that the sword had 2 edges because he made it. And also, since everyone else is right-handed, they wouldn't be prepared to fight with someone left-handed. He knows things that they don't. They're not prepared for that, and he could do things that an attack from a side that they're not ready for.
Exactly. Okay. So it says,
watch this, right?
Now it says in 17, and he goes, Ehud goes and offered a present to Eglon, the king of Moab, and he says to him, when he finishes offering some gift that he's bringing.
I thought it was they brought taxes.
What? I'm sorry?
I thought they brought taxes. Taxes. T-A-X-E-S.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't say that in my text, but he brings something to the king, and he's offering them a gift, and he is escorted into where the king is sitting, and it says, and he turned back from the quarries. Apparently, he crossed over into Moab, or maybe he went somewhere where the king was, and he goes to, oh, it says Gilgal. Okay, so, and he says he has a secret errand with you, O king. And he said to everyone, the king said, be quiet. And everyone stood there with him, and he tells everyone to leave the room, because Ehud says he has a message for him. He has a message from God. So it says Ehud came to him, and he was sitting by himself in the cool upper room, which he had for himself. Now, apparently, he was extremely obese, extremely unable to move quickly, and he had his throne raised up quite high, where the cooler air may have been flowing in some air in this, wherever he was sitting. And so he says, as Ehud approaches him, he says to Ehud says, I have a message from God to you. And Ehud then struggles to stand. He gets up from his chair, from his throne, and Ehud.
Not Ehud, Eglon.
Yeah, Eglon. Yes, but Eglon is standing in front of Ehud, and Ehud stretches out his left hand, and he takes his sword from his right side where he had it concealed, and what happens? He thrusts it into his obese belly. He doesn't pull it out. He leaves it there.
Right.
Okay. Now, what happens after that, because everyone was gone, because he said he had a secret and it was a message from God, Eglon had cleared out the room. And it was just Eglon and Ehud in the room together. Now, Eglon has this very long double edged. Now, you know why it was double edged, because it was meant to kill Eglon. So when you stick a knife in, you didn't even have to turn it because it was sharp on both sides. So Ehud takes these, after he takes the sword, he goes and locks the door of the chamber so that no one can come in. And while he does that, Eglon is bleeding, and the description in the commentary is that the fat is oozing out, and everything is just disgusting, and there's starting to become an odor.
Oh, lunch is on the way, please.
hang in there. And as the sword remains, things start coming out. It says in my text, excrement, etc. And Ehud goes out onto the mirpeset of the room and escapes. And he escapes back to where he came from in Eretz Yisrael. Now, the room is locked, so the guards, not realizing that that it's locked, they go to the door thinking, well, they've been in that room an awful long time. So they try the door doesn't open, and they start to smell the excrement coming out of Eglon. So they think he's in the bathroom. So they give him they give him some more time, privacy. They don't go in right away, which for Eglon is not a good thing. And once they finally enter into the room, they find him dead. During this time, Ehud has run back, and now he's blowing a shofar and letting the people know to rally with him against the country of Moab, Ammon, and the Amalekites, because they're probably going to attack to avenge their king's death, King Eglon, and they successfully defeat the enemy. Now, this is one of the stories we seem to know much better than most other stories. It has much more detail in it in terms of what happens to Eglon. But the interesting thing is, we often hear in confrontation with the enemy that when we mention the name of God, either a king will stand, as in this case of Eglon, when Ehud said, I have a message from God. This very huge man stands up because he's giving respect to God.
That's interesting.
So God, the God of the world, when someone gives him respect, God always seems to give them a reward of some sort. We learned a little bit before this when we were reading about one of the kings whose hobby was cutting off toes and fingers. Remember, we read it a couple weeks ago. But when they said when Bnei Yisrael comes and does the same thing to him, he says, I guess that's the just reward that I get from God. And so they don't kill him. They don't kill him because he recognizes that it was Mida Keneged Mida. It was, he got what he deserved. And so consequently, with Eglon standing in front of Ehud, he is given a reward. Now, can anybody think of what that reward might be?
Yes, Ruth was a descendant of his.
Exactly. And from Ruth comes
King.
David.
David HaMelech.
David HaMelech.
That's right. So Ruth comes from Eglon, from Moab. He's rewarded with kingship through Ruth, and David HaMelech comes from her. So in every time that we learn that there is respect and honor given to God by someone, they are rewarded. whether it's B'nai Israel, whether it's someone else who does something outstanding, whether it's the righteous among the nations, whoever it is, God rewards those who love and respect God or give him honor. So I think that's where we're going to end. I'm not going to go into the next judge right now. We're going to stop here and we'll continue next week with the third judge. So now,
I just,
yes,
may I
questions.
say,
Yes.
this is not about Shoftim. This is about Beverly. Okay,
Oh.
she's having another transfusion today,
Right.
but she would welcome any calls or any messages.
Okay, very good. Yeah, she's
Well,
by herself in the hospital, and it's so she's very lonesome, and she would
and
probably
it's Basha Batsivia.
right. So thank you, Linda. Any other comments or questions? Anybody have
Can I
something? Yeah.
quickly? I think that Judaism is difficult when you're talking about two different religions and taking the easy way out, because in Yiddishkeit, you have so many mitzvahs that you do that are timed. You know, like you don't say chakras at night. It's like more confining in a way.
Okay. Well, there are reasons, and then we don't know all the reasons for things that we're supposed to do, but God does. But that gives us a different outlook and a different purpose in our lives. And it puts things in perspective of what life really is. So God wants us to serve him with all these mitzvot and not take the easy way out. You know, whenever you hear a Jew complaining, what's the first thing they said? Life's not easy. Nobody said God gave us an easy life. So, you know, I don't think that any other religion can say that. I think that we have so many rules, regulations, observances, you know, behaviors, etc., that it's challenging. And for people to take the easier way out is often the choice, that the easier choice that they make. Okay, anybody else want to say anything before we end for the day? Good to see everybody. Glad everyone was with us, and we will continue.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank
you, Rhonda.
Take care.
So
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Be well, everybody.
Please
reserve for the program on next
Thank you.
Monday night.
Everybody sign up for next week's program, July 10th. Doug Goldstein, very interesting. He's always quoted in the Jerusalem Post, and he's a very interesting financial advisor. Rose, don't go away. Okay. Let's see. I need to stop the recording.